What is up, Healthcare Squad? Logan here with Healthcare Stress Relief. And today, joined by a very special guest, Mr. Dr. John Mcrae.
Yes.
Did I get it right? Yeah.
Got it
So
right.
Dr. John is a nurse practitioner. He was working as a bedside nurse before, right?
Yeah, you got it. So I was a bedside nurse for, about 5 years in a medical surgical unit. And then I graduated into administration. Initially, my plan was to climb the hospital ladder. I quickly realized that bureaucracy was not my forte. I got frustrated with the way decisions were made, AKA money was king, safety was not, patients suffered as a result. And I realized that little old me was not going to be able to change that system. And so I went back to school, got my NP. I'm here in Idaho. I was actually the first class in the state of Idaho to graduate with a doctorate. So I'm a doctorate nurse practitioner.
Congrats.
Really cool. That was a hell of a lot of work. But the end result was I became an NP. Well, guess what? When you're an NP and you start looking into jobs for an NP, these big healthcare organizations have the same mentality, AKA churn, burn patients, and in the result, burn you out. And burnout's a huge thing with the nursing profession, as I'm well aware if you're part of this group. And it's a huge problem with nurse practitioners anyway, so my preceptors were seeing 20 to 30 patients a day. As a provider, you would see these patients for, if you got 5 minutes of conversation with them, you were lucky. And then you had to write prescriptions and do plans for 5 minutes, and then you had to document for 5 minutes, and then you did it over again. And it was just exhausting. And my last year of internship, I said, hell no, I'm not doing that anymore. And I went on and started my own business. So that's where we are today. I started my own business. I called it a wellness center. It's called Mountain West Medical. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can either go to Dr. John Mcrae at Dr. John Mcrae or at Mountain West Medical, and you will see what I do on a daily basis. Started off as a kind of making pills, not focusing on sickness, but more focusing on wellness. And I found out quickly that people want to feel good, not only on the inside, healthy wise, they also want to feel good on the outside. And I kind of stumbled into aesthetics. Started off just doing a little bit of Botox, and patients would ask me for another thing. I started doing skin treatments, and then we started doing fillers, and then it has just ballooned. And now I do tons of stuff. And so, and I love it. I love it, love it, love it. I kind of missed, though, mentoring nurses. I did a lot of that when I was in the hospital administration. A lot of one-on-one with nurses, helping them develop their careers, getting them more education, and just kind of mentoring them down their process. And when I started my own business, I didn't have that anymore. And then I started a little side hustle just recently, actually when COVID hit, and I saw how nurses were struggling and healthcare providers were struggling. I thought, hey, we got to get these people out of the bedside. However, that's a very important and noble career, don't get me wrong, but it's a short-lived career.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
No, it's not sustainable. I mean, being in the ICU, I know that you've been there, done that, but definitely not a sustainable process. So anyways, I created an avenue for nurses to start their own side hustle by starting their own aesthetics businesses. And so now I do training on that as a little side hustle for myself, and it's been really rewarding.
Incredible. And for a nurse who doesn't have their doctorate,
yes,
they can practice this?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different. Obviously, I mean, nurses are limited within their scope of practice laws, and every state's a little bit different as well. Here in Idaho, we're a very rural state, and as such, they really let nurses practice to the full scope of their authority. Now, while a nurse in the state of Idaho could never prescribe a medication, like let's use Botox, for example, they would never be able to prescribe a medication. What they do to get around that is they get a medical director, such as me, a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant or an MD, as to kind of just guide their process. And they get protocols in place so the medical director can sign off on that. And then they see patients independently pretty much of the medical director. I actually have a few nurses that work underneath me that have started their own side hustle. And one of them is very successful. One of them just does it for a little extra income from time to time. and we have a relationship built on that. So think about like when you're in the hospital and you're taking verbal orders for meds and whatnot. It's kind of the same process as a nurse to do this, but now instead of being in a hospital and wiping bums and poking needles, you're doing it for fun.
Amazing. Yeah. And the reason I reached out to you is because it looks like you have a very rewarding and fulfilling career. You have direct interaction with your patients, and your patients are also coming back. So you've fostered a relationship that you're going to have for years to come, right?
You've got it. One thing nurses are good at, I just had this flashback to when I was a bedside nurse. I had this client or a patient at the time who had just gotten surgery, and I was walking him in the halls. And I said, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" He goes, "I'm a pharmaceutical rep." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "Yeah, I always hire nurses for my pharmaceutical reps." I go, "Oh, why is that?" He goes, "Because nurses know how to sell and they know how to communicate with people." And I go, "Oh, I'm not a salesman." He goes, "What the hell are you talking about? You've already sold me on 6 things I didn't want to do today." And he goes, "Now sell me drugs. That's a lot easier." And he goes, so for him. So anyways, to my perspective, when you go from the nursing field into like a provider role or into an aesthetics role or into one of these other roles, you've got all the skills. You know how to talk to people, you know how to empathize with people, you know how to listen, you know how to think. All these things that nurses are awesome at, you've got it. All you got to do is need a little bit of the business side of it. And that's where I come.
Yeah. And I think one thing with the nurses that I'm working with is a lot of them want to transition and they don't know their worth. The crazy thing about nursing is you're taught critical thinking. And so you now have a brain that works in it's one of the most adaptable professions, and you don't even necessarily have to stay in the nursing profession to still be able to get a career that you like. Because if you walk down the street and talk to Joe, he's going to start talking about his grandma who was just in the hospital, because everybody has either been sick or they know someone who has been sick. So they find out you were a nurse or are a nurse, and they're instantly liking you.
Yep. Yeah, you got it. The sky's your limit. I tell, when I mentor nurses, I always tell them that there's 3 things they need to look for in the ideal job. They need to understand what their passion is. They need to understand what their talents are. And then they need to have an understanding of what their mission is in life. And where those 3 things intersect, you have a career. And that's going to be a career that you find very fulfilling. I mean, our hospital's downtown, here in Idaho, it's in downtown Boise. And every time I drive downtown Boise and I go around this one curve in the bend, I get this little PTSD in my heart. Because 10 years ago, I was driving in to go do horrible things into a high stress job, and I still respond to that.
Yeah.
That stress is gone. Like this sounds so cliche, but on Sunday nights after my weekend's over, I'm kind of like, man, I need to get back to work. I kind of miss that. Why? It's my own baby. It's what I love to do. I'm very good at it. Talent. My passion's helping people. And my mission is to build a successful business and spread the word. And I'm doing all 3 of those things is very rewarding. It's still work. I'm still tired at the end of the day. Like today, I was incredibly busy, exhausted mentally, but now I'm going into my weekend. Oh, by the way, I only work 4 days a week, which is wonderful too.
You got Friday off?
Yeah, I get, so wow. I make my own schedule because I own my own business. So I work 31 hours a week. I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm off at 2 p.m. on Thursdays, and then I have every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. So it's pretty wonderful.
Absolutely incredible. How would you advise people to make sure those 3 pillars are aligned with passion, purpose, and talent?
I didn't invent that. I got that from somebody else, just like everything in life. There's a guy out there, his name's Ken Coleman. He's now a radio pundit. He's his passion, mission, and talents are guiding people down career pathways. And he has a book out there called The Proximity Principle. And it's a good read. You guys should read it. It relates into how to find your dream job and what to do about finding your dream job. And he goes into much more detail about that. Pick up his book on Amazon, The Proximity Principle by Ken Coleman. It's a great read. And when we're talking about reading, one of the best things you can do for yourself is read a lot of books from a lot of smart people.
Nonfiction.
Nonfiction, right? Well, and read fiction too. That's it. That's enjoyable. But read nonfiction. There's a lot of smart people out there that are willing to give you, let them pick your brain in the form of a book, and that's cheap. I mean, you go get it on the library. I mean, now with Amazon and with libraries all being online, I can get a book for free through my local library onto my phone, and I can read it on my phone. I mean, it's amazing technology. Read a book every couple of months about careers or about expanding your careers, setting boundaries, stuff like that. There's a lot of good authors out there. But if you want to if you're kind of like, this isn't the place for me, I'm a nurse, I got in it to help people, that's not happening, they're giving me more patients than I can handle, I'm feeling burned out, I want something different, do something different.
Yeah, and I would say also a book, in my opinion, is a mentor, but also a game changer for me. How I got launched into the entrepreneur game was investing in people who are doing what I want to be doing.
Yeah, and that's that proximity principle, right? You get close to people that are doing what you want to do, and you learn from them. And here's the funny thing. Everybody's like, oh, nobody's going to want to share their secrets because they'll be creating their competition. That's not how it works. Successful people in life want to help you. They
know how hard it was.
Yeah, they're already successful. I was doing a training, not last weekend, but the weekend before, with a bunch of peers. And one of them said, hey, you realize that you're training your competition right here. Like, we're going to go out and we're going to be competing for the same patients. And the aesthetic world's very competitive. And then I said, listen, here's the reality. People are going to come to me that want to come to me. People are going to go to you that want to come to you. There's plenty of people to go around.
Yeah.
I'm just here to make your life better and for you to learn and stuff like that. And that's how professionals are. If they're not doing that, if it's all about them, those aren't the people you want to be picking their brains from anyways.
Well, that kind of thinking is also scarcity, right? There's a huge pie and there's a huge market, and we can all share the pie.
You got it.
Cool. So a question I had was, a nurse wants to work with you. What is the kind of litigation that they have to go through in order to work with you? Do they have to pay any fees, stuff like that, to have an NP above them?
For me to train them?
Yeah, or to have an NP above them.
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so I made this little, this is kind of a loaded question because there's a lot of little intricacies to it. So I actually made a little online course. It was actually kind of expensive for me to make, but I offer it for very cheap. And it's just kind of like, hey, I'm thinking about starting an aesthetics practice. What do I need to think about? It takes you about an hour. If you go to at Dr. John Mcrae, you'll see a link in my bio. You can click on that and take it. I think we charge like $20 or $23 or something like that for it. But it will answer all those questions. But to answer your direct question, like, what does this cost? Most nurses will make a relationship with their medical provider, or that's ordering the meds and prescribing their meds, and give them a cut of like 10%. So yeah, it's some money, but in the reality of it, it's money well spent because you didn't have to go to NP school, which is exhausting.
Yeah, and you have freedom to have your own practice, right?
Exactly. It's your baby. Like the nurses I have that are underneath me, I don't like using that term, but I'm prescribing medication for you. I don't tell them what to do. They do their own. It's their baby. They raise it how they want. I'm just a tool to help them along. And if they have questions, I'll mentor them and I'll do some stuff with them. But yeah. So to answer that part of the question, that's what I do anyways, is 10%. There's other models out there where you do like per patient and they do a fee per patient type of a thing, but that works best for us.
Okay, so let's say I want to open my own practice, and so yeah. I fly to Idaho and I pay your fee for you to mentor me, right?
Sure.
And then where do I go from there? I can just rent out a studio or something and then make my practice right there.
You could do it like that. So where are you at, Logan? Like
I'm in Colombia.
Oh, that's right. You told me that. You're down in Colombia. So let's say whatever state you're in, you've got to kind of, the first thing you need to do is understanding the scope of practice laws. Like for instance, let's say you're in California. California does not allow a nurse to set up a medical practice and have without a physician or a NP on site.
Okay.
So
On
it's really not
site.
gonna,
Okay.
on site. Yeah. So it's really not going to work for you in California. That's a minority, right? Most states aren't like that. Most states will allow now that might be changing with telehealth laws, right? Because of the pandemic, laws are changing about virtual and telehealth. So now is a telehealth provider going to work? I don't know. That's something you're going to have to explore. So the first thing you need to do is understand, is this something that I could do in my state with the laws that I have for my practice? Okay. And then let's say you can, and let's say you come and get the training, and you can come get the training from me. And there's a lot of other providers out there that offer this kind of training. And let's say you get trained up and you feel like you have a good skill set and you want to start a practice. Well, starting a practice could be as simple as you want to make it or as complicated as you want to make it. So what do I mean by that? You could do what you just said and get a brick and mortar, go rent a studio, buy all the equipment, set it up, hire a front end staff, somebody to check you in, pay for a website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and start a brick and mortar business. That's what I did. That's not actually what I encourage most people to do. I encourage most people to start a little side hustle and do it simply. Do a Botox party where you don't have a brick and mortar and you just go to somebody's house. They arrange 6 to 8 people. You talk to them about this, you inject them, you talk to them about some other stuff. Or if, let's say you're downtown New York, call some companies and say, hey, I do mobile injections. Do you have executives or anybody that doesn't have time to go out of their building, get in a taxi, go to the clinic, go back? I mean, that's an hour of their day. I will come to you. There's a premium with that, but I'll come to you and get it done. There's a lot of people that are willing to do that. Okay. So that's an example of like a mobile business. Let's say you want to take it up a notch. There's a nurse that I know that has a mobile business and operates out of a van. So they've bought, that's pretty cool. They've bought a big white van. They put a salon chair in there that they can do all their treatments. It's all stocked with all the necessary medicines and whatnot. Has a refrigerator in there to store the medications, and they will drive to where people want to go. And then they come out, they get in the van, they do their treatment, and they go back, and he drives to the next place. So that's pretty cool.
Incredible.
But let's say you want a permanent location. A couple of options for you is salons. They'll build these big buildings and then they rent out these individual rooms for each stylist, right? Go rent a room. They're actually fairly inexpensive. Here in Idaho, you can get one for a couple $100 a month.
Wow.
With that room comes a front end staff that can sit. You have a waiting room, you have that kind of stuff, and then you have your room. You set it up however you want to do it. You don't have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into buying a building and all the equipment and hiring staff and all that overhead. Another option that I kind of encourage trainees to seek out is go to dental offices. Most dentists don't do this kind of stuff. Their offices are set up perfectly for facial injections. Why? Because they're working on the face. And you say, hey, can I come in here? Do you have an extra room? I'll give you a cut. Most dentists can be a medical director. So
I was just going to ask that. That's incredible.
It depends on the state, but they might be able to be your medical director, and then you give them a cut, and then you come in, you have access to their patients, and you just put out little flyers and say, hey, we're now doing Botox, just schedule with me. And then you set up your own little room and do Botox or fillers or whatever you want to do. Or you can start the brick and mortar, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can buy you can buy an existing business. I was at a conference last week in Phoenix, or 2 weeks ago in Scottsdale. And there was a person there that was a nurse that just has this huge practice. She employs 4 NPs, and she's just a nurse, and she's incredibly wealthy. So don't feel like you're ever just a nurse. You've got all the skill sets you want to be successful in your business. There's nothing more empowering than starting your own business. It's like having a baby. For all you parents out there, you have this baby, and at first it really sucks, right? They're pooping, they're peeing, they just take. You feed them, They don't give anything back. Oh, they look kind of cute. But then eventually they turn into these little toddlers that are super fun. And then eventually they turn into these little preteens that have all these like nuances and cracking jokes. And then pretty soon, you know, they're teenagers causing you problems again, right? That's a business. And then at some point, that business gives you grandbabies, and you're old and you're like, oh, I love my grandbabies. There's nothing wrong with my grandbabies. And so anyways, that's kind of what it's like when you go into business for yourself. There's a lot of upside. There's some risk, obviously, but a lot of upside.
But the amount of freedom you can create having your own business is unprecedented compared to.
Yeah, well, let's just talk a few numbers here. So let's say all you want to do is Botox, and Botox is literally the simplest thing once you learn how to do it. I mean, I could teach a monkey how to do it. I can't teach a monkey how to think, but the act of putting a needle into somebody's muscles is something that nurses do all day, every day. Mm-hmm. Let's say you did one Botox party a week, and you had 8 people show up, and you charged, let's say, $10 a unit, and the average person did 30 units. Okay, so I'm going to do the math with 10 people because that'll be easier. So that's 300 units of Botox that you've administered to 10 different people. Okay, your profit margin on that is about $5 a unit. You just made $1,500 in 2 hours. Now think about how, when you're in the hospital, how much butt wiping you had to do, how much aggravation you had to get from the physicians, how much stress you're under because they just gave you an extra patient because they're short-staffed. Oh, they just pulled your nursing assistant to go sit with the crazy patient. Now it's just you. You don't have any help. You're right. Then the list goes on and on. How much did you have to work at the hospital for $1,500? Now every state's a little different. When I was in school, when I was working at the bedside, that was a week's worth of work. And you just did it in 2 hours, and you had a lot of fun doing it. And that's just one door.
This is the kind of information I want to get out, because this is obviously in the book, the shit they don't teach you in nursing school, and that's entrepreneurship.
They don't. Now, let's say you did that one Botox party, and here's the thing that people don't realize is that Botox is something you have to keep on top of. So you're doing that every 3 months. So for instance, in my practice, I do mobile aesthetics. I have a group of friends who, there's about 7 of them that are like every 3 months they get together and we do a party. But they always bring in like stragglers, like, oh, this month we have 10 people, or this month we have 8 people. And we do that every 3 months. They set up a party, and then I go there with my assistant and we do a Botox party. And we have a lot of fun, and we make some decent money.
Yeah,
because they'll keep coming back, and then you get like 10 of these groups of friends, and boom, you've got a business.
Yeah, and I can only imagine when you have several of these parties happening every month for every 3 months, then yeah,
you got it. Yeah, if you did one a week, you're making $6,000 for 2, 4, 6, 8 hours worth of work. Oh, we got drive time and stuff like that. Let's just say 10. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a good living to me. Then you could be, you don't have to put your kids in daycare, whatever. You have time.
And the cool thing too is you're working with generally already healthy people, right?
Of course, they're healthy,
happy.
They want to be there. They want to be there, and you get a free dinner because in my practice, they have to come up with hors d'oeuvres and drinks and stuff. So I always get a snack in a little bit.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
and then
that's just one little example.
Amazing. And then RN versus NP, are there certain things you can do that an RN can't do?
For sure. I don't have to go to get permission from anybody. So if I want to do something to a patient, I just have to have the skill set to do that thing for that patient. So I'm not calling anybody. I'm not getting like an MD's approval to do anything. So in that instance, I've got a lot more freedom of practice. An RN is going to be limited to what her medical director will allow him or her to do. Mm-hmm. So, but as far as the skill set, like what do I do that an RN can't? Like if the RN got the order from me to do it, they could do all the fillers they want to do. They could do all the Botox they want to do. They could do all the skin treatments that they want to do. I do some pretty invasive stuff. I do like hair transplants in my clinic. They're not going to be able to do that. I do fat transfer where I'll take fat from one part of the body and I'll put it in another. They're not going to be able to do that. I do some gynecology in my practice. It's called the O shot. It helps feminine, helps you have orgasms and whatnot. They're not going to be able to do that. They're not, that's kind of out of their scope of practice. But I would say 90% of what I do, an RN can do. I learned most of my skill sets from RNs.
Really?
Like when I did training, it was mostly RNs teaching me how to do it. If that tells you anything. In fact, in April, I have an RN from one of my pharmaceutical companies that I buy product from. She's coming to do a training for me for 2 hours.
Awesome.
So I'm flying her in to do training with me. So and that's the interesting part. If you want to go on and train other people, you can go on and train other people. I'm not the first person to ever figure out how to do this. Get the skill set, become an expert at it, and then have other people pay you how to do it. I know of a nurse who her whole job, she was a travel nurse forever, and then she learned how to do Botox, and she got really good at it. And then she started her own little training company, and now she flies around and trains people how to do it. And she makes way more than I do. And she's a nurse.
Yeah, the opportunity.
Yep.
And then I know you probably have some numbers in your head. What is the beauty industry looking like right now? It's only growing, right?
I do. So they say by 2025, and I just looked at this chart, which is why they're coming to my head. So it's perfect time to ask it. They think that facial aesthetics is going to compromise a 15 billion with a B price tag by 2025, of which 40% will be just neuromodulators. Neuromodulator, fancy word for Botox, Dysport, Jeuveau, Xeomin, what we've been talking about.
40%. Wow.
40%. So you've got 7 billion, 8 billion, no, 6 billion. I'm not good at math. $6 billion that's out there they're going to pay somebody to do this stuff. So there's plenty to go around. And the more you talk about it, the more you get better at it.
Okay, cool. And then, so what was NP school like for you? Because how many more years is that on top of the RN degree?
Yeah, NP school was not fun.
It's rough, right?
It's rough. I have a motto, and this is a good motto for you in life. My motto was a lot of suck now for less suck later.
Yep.
Okay. You endure a lot of trauma. You endure a lot of awfulness to not have to deal with that again. Mm-hmm. And so NP school for me was full-time NP school for 3 years, of which the last year was spent doing a doctoral project and classes. I had a doctoral project I had to do, which was god awful. And I mean, it was awful, but once you're done, you're done. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Really slow. You're pulling off this Band-Aid really slow. And that's 3 years of hell. But then once it's off, and you're your own person. So I will always encourage people to do it. Just be prepared to do it. It really hurts your family life. Because, I mean, at one point in NP school, I kept my full-time job at the hospital, which is a mistake.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was working full-time. I was doing my classes, and then I got this really awesome internship with the VA where they paid me as a student NP. Okay. Ooh. And I did that for a year, but I was doing 20 hours a week there. So I'm working full time. I'm doing 20 hours a week as a paid intern for the VA. And then I'm doing classwork on top of that. I literally had half a day off a week. Sunday afternoons was my family time. The rest of the week was work. And I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked. And when I got out of it in NP school, I started my own business, and I kept my day job at the hospital as a nurse. And I did that full time for 2.5 years until my practice was big enough to sustain me.
I never thought of that. You can actually, I mean, yeah, if you're willing to take on the hours, you can still work as a nurse in an RN position, right?
A lot of NPs do. Well, nurses make good money.
Yeah.
And if you go, an NP straight out of school that goes to work for a clinic, you're going to make about $100,000 a year. A lot of bedside nurses make close to that. It's not a huge pay bump to go work for somebody else as an NP.
A lot of NPs actually take a pay cut from when they were a nurse. Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't have the overtime, you don't have the incentive pays, you don't have all that crazy pay structure. You know, when I was a nurse, they had this thing called core incentive where they, you know, and every hospital has something similar. Oh, they're so short staffed, they'll pay you like 2.6 times your base rate. Well, if you're making $35 an hour and now all of a sudden you're making $80 an hour, that's great. You don't make that as an NP. You're on salary, you know? And so my colleagues, when we graduated May of 2016. So it's been about 5 years. They all got jobs for under $100,000. Now we're in Idaho. It might be different where you guys are living, but they all got. Well, I was working as a hospital supervisor, and I was making close to that. So I just kept my day job, and I started my side business, reinvested all the money I had in my side business, and then grew that. And now I make a lot more than that.
And did you personally experience, I already know you did, but a lot of burnout?
Oh, are you kidding me?
You're still recovering, right?
Yeah, I remember being 3 months out of nursing school, not NP school, nursing school. And I remember sitting at the nurse's station, having dealt with whatever hell I was dealing with that night, thinking, how am I going to tell my wife I want to quit this job? Yeah. And anyways, I obviously didn't quit. I stuck with it. And then you kind of get used to that awfulness. You kind of live in the stress. And I did that for, 3 or 4 years. And I got into administration, which was a whole different set of stressors. You don't realize what kind of stress you're on until you're out of it.
Exactly. Yeah. The people I work with, it's like it's a slow thing that you just get used to. It's like being in quicksand. If you jump in the quicksand, you can probably get out. But if you're in it for too long, the only way to get out is pretty much through help.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You just don't want to be that person that just sticks in. I mean, unless you're passionate about what you do and you absolutely love it, and those three things interline, the mission, passion, and talents. All jobs have stress in them. It's just how you deal with it. But I didn't have. I had the talent to be a nurse. My mission was to help people, but I did not have the passion for the job I was in, and that's where you get burned out.
Yeah, and it sounds like I'm an advocate for exactly what you said. Like if you have a plan to slowly rip the Band-Aid off so that your skin can actually get stronger and you can live a more fulfilling life, then that's great. But I think in nursing culture, there is this form of toxicity about you have to work harder. And I was a new nurse and I went per diem because I was too stressed out. And all my coworkers said, you can't do that. And then I started developing eczema and all these symptoms. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to leave and move to Colombia. And all my coworkers said, you can't do that. And it's like crabs in a bucket. They want to pull you back down when you try and jump out.
I know. And part of that's just human nature. I mean, if we can't get what you're going to do, we want to to make ourselves feel better. We want to bring you down to our level. And that's not just nurses. That's everybody.
That's everyone. Yeah.
If you're in that kind of a caustic situation, do you really want to be surrounded by those kind of people? I don't.
No, and sadly, I saw with a lot of my coworkers, it's just exactly what we're talking about. They get to a certain level, and that's their state of being, and they don't realize how much better life could be if they just took some more time to care for themselves and refine their passions and their purpose in life. You just get kind of stuck in this treadmill that you just hop on every day, and then before you know it, you're 60 years old waiting for And I saw so many nurses who were just like, yep, 5 more years. Every day they're counting down. I'm like, wow, you're not really enjoying yourself.
No. And we all had those nurses too. So don't be that. My journey becoming an NP and starting my own business and now being a nurse entrepreneur has been nothing but blessings. It's been nothing but blessings, and people will do everything they can to help you as long as you help them. My patients are very devoted to me. I'm devoted to them. It's wonderful. It's a great relationship. I have lifelong relationships now. Friends I've never thought I'd have. It's pretty cool.
Amazing. So yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Do you have a last tidbit of advice for the new nursing population, or
Yes.
the newer nurses who are coming in?
Take this. We talked about a lot of suck now for less suck later. Put in the hard work now; it will pay off later. And then the last thing I want to say is, without risk, there is no reward. I didn't come up with that phrase. I'm sure you've all heard it before. You have to risk. You have to risk some money. You have to risk some finances. You have to risk your time. You have to take a risk. But a little bit of risk will give you so much reward. I promise you it's worth it. The best risk you could take is on yourself. You'll never fail if you do that.
Great advice. Thank you so much, John, for
It's
coming
been a
on and
pleasure.
chatting. Yeah. So if you want to follow John, you can find his Instagram, Dr. John Mcrae. That's John with HN, JOHN, MCRAE.
You got it. That's on my Instagram handle. And you can also go to @Mountain West Medical to see my business side. So the Dr. John is just mentoring nurses, and then my Mountain West is my business side. We have a lot of fun on both of those. So.
And then you have mountainwestmedical.com as well, right?
You got it. That's my website.
Yeah. And then if you're interested in working with him, he's got obviously the free course, which you can find on his Instagram. And then he also does on site. You can fly to him, drive to him, or he can come to you. So
you got it. Yep.
Thank you so much, John.
You betcha. Hey, it's been a pleasure. You guys have a good one.
Take care.